afternoon, it's Daniel Curry. Before we go on this journey together and I kind of bring you a little bit into my world, video by video, I'd like to take the time now to give you some background information, some contextual information on just me, myself, as a person, and just kind of how I got to where I'm at now. So I've always been passionate about animals. They've kind of been the main life forms that have helped me through my life. They're always there for me in some capacity or another. We grew up, my family and I grew up very poor, very sheltered in many ways. We didn't get to experience what normal children do at that age. Amongst that was the fact that we had a single mom, my brother and I. It just kind of became really apparent that animals were going to be my main go-to for companionship and friends. I just find them to be pure of heart and pure of spirit, and they're pretty solid characters in my opinion. I try and strive to utilize them as an example of how I should and want to live my life in a better fashion towards myself, towards friends and family, towards the environment, and towards perfectly good strangers. My first paid gig was working at a fish store is what it was called, but it actually had, you know, avians, aquatic animals obviously being a fish store, reptilians, small mammals, everything from hamsters to giant catfish. So my job there was to run the reptilian, avian, and small mammal department, which I really found rewarding in many ways. It was cool just to teach people about animals, the different species that I was able to work with. It was really cool to help bridge that gap in that fashion and just help people find those animal companions. So really rewarding there. Went from that to going to becoming a veterinary technician. I thrived with the challenge of veterinary medicine. I really loved pulling samples, doing slides. I loved working directly with the animals. I loved assisting in surgeries. Anything about that was just right down my alley in many ways. Went from that pretty much due to some vehicle circumstances. My Jeep at the time blew up on the side of the highway. I had a friend that was actually working with me at the veterinary hospital at the time. She was coming to get me on her lunch break and then taking me home after work, and that lasted for about a week and a half, and I was like, this is just not doable. This is just not sustainable for you. I feel really just horrible in taking your time. Was pretty bummed that I couldn't be a vet tech anymore at that point. I had no wheels. So, and this was after working at 2 different hospitals. Really just loved that field. Anyways, once I got wheels back under me, I said, you know, how am I going to work with animals again? I really find that that's why I'm here, and I need to find somewhere to do that. Picked up a phone book, started strumming through the pages. Thought maybe a zoo would be a good place for me to work. So found a wolf organization. It was a wolf sanctuary, recognized internationally. I called them up, said, hey, are you looking to hire anybody? I'd be really interested in working in your animal care staff. I told them my previous experience as a veterinary technician. They said, that's great. Currently we're not looking to hire, but we'd love to have you volunteer. So I said, you know, I'd love to volunteer sometime too. So after a short stint of volunteering my time there at Wolf Haven International, there was an opening due to some circumstances in the maintenance department, and they needed a new maintenance man. I didn't really want that. After talking to some friends and family, they said, you know, get your foot in the door, and then they'll realize kind of how passionate you are about animals. Maybe you'll have a chance to show your skills and show kind of what you're doing, and the fact that you know what to do when it comes to working with animals. So I took that position. About maybe a month went by, and the animal curator, due to another circumstance, was alone, and she asked me to assist her in a process of pulling a blood sample from some animals. Went into this enclosure, really just, I was ecstatic. I mean, to be honest, when she first asked me, I was like, inside, I was like, hell yeah, hell yeah, yeah. I mean, I was super stoked. I was just blown away that I was gonna be able to go inside this wolf enclosure and help this animal curator do her job. So I was super stoked, very stoic on the outside, very stoked on the inside. So I basically said, absolutely, I'd be more than willing to help you. And she kind of went through the rundown of how I should act in there and what's expected of me in there. Went inside the enclosure. She was able to go inside the deck pen, which is just a structure attached to the side of the enclosure, and she felt confident to do what she needed to do with that animal. It was a red wolf, so a little bit smaller than gray wolves. So she was confident, she was able to do what she needed to. She just asked me to basically oversee and make sure that the wolves, the other animals inside the enclosure, didn't come in close proximity to what she was doing with that specific individual. So I did my job. I was very stalwart in it. I was very focused in it. And afterwards she said, you did an excellent job, and I really would like to offer you some more opportunities to help me if you're interested. And I said, oh, absolutely, I'd love that. So maybe another month went by, and she asked me to assist her again, go inside a wolf enclosure. And this animal was in a makeshift wolf den. It was a man-made wolf den, and she needed to pull a blood sample again. She was having trouble this time and wasn't able to do it herself. She was kind of struggling, and I was watching this happening while I was, doing the job that was assigned to me and watching her surroundings. And I'm watching what's going on inside this makeshift wolf den, and inside I'm just screaming like, you can do this, Daniel. You can totally do this. You can 100% do this. And it became so audible inside my head, I think it just bursted through my lips and said, it just came out as, I could do this if you'd like. And she looks at me and she says, are you sure? And I said, absolutely. I'm confident that I can pull that blood sample by myself if you'd like. And she said, okay. So I crawled my butt in there. Not a very big space, but really just a cool experience. It was the first time I had ever actually touched an animal of that magnitude. To touch a wolf is something very special. So I'm in there. I'm able to pull the blood sample, hold the cephalic vein off. I pull the samples out of my pocket. I give it to her, and she's like, "Wow, that was amazing," And shortly after that, I was offered a job as a lead animal care. Wolf Haven was an amazing opportunity for me. I learned so much there, was gifted with so many amazing relationships with the animals that I was in charge of taking care of. They quickly became my very important, very just dear to my heart family members, and would never want to take that back. That was a gift that is ineffable. I just cannot put words to it. Beyond that, shoot, I met an amazing group of people that are doing some really special, really important work. I was able to be a part of that, and not just be a part of it, but I actually started to excel in many ways. Like, I was able to create new equipment to aid us in our catching up of our animals there. I was able to, with the help of some coworkers, revamp some equipment that was kind of, I hate to use the word archaic, but just kind of, it could use a revamp, basically. It was just out of date. We became so good at what we did, and I don't mean that arrogantly, it was a fact that we were excellent at what we did, that we started going around to zoos, Woodland Park, Point Defiance, helping them catch up their animals, showing them our methodology, and just helping kind of convey what we learned from the best teachers of watching over wolves, which was the wolves. And that's something that I really took to heart, and we've since then done a lot of good in that field and taught a lot of people. So, and that's internationally. I mean, that wasn't just those two zoos that I mentioned. So everything from that to learning about myself, a tremendous amount. I remember this one instance, we were actually having a Howlin', which is an event that they held every summer. And you'd come out there and we'd, animal care would tell you how we take care of animals. The, volunteer coordinator would recruit volunteers. Basically, every position would have a table, and we'd just kind of explain what Wolf Haven was doing. And I remember one specific instance, we had a Q&A for animal care, and we were put up on stage, and people asked us, what have you learned the most out of what you're doing here, working with these animals? And I had two coworkers, and one was like, I didn't know how much wolves ate. It was insane to find out how much they can actually consume. And my other coworker said something effective, like just the ecological niche that wolves need to fill. And granted, I learned all that too, but to answer that gentleman's question honestly, of what have I learned the most of when working with these animals, is it's about me. I've learned the most about me, which was a really big takeaway for me. And it kind of just, people in the audience were like, wow, I never even thought about that. So you can learn a lot from wolves and about yourself when a wolf is as close as that camera is to me, and there's nothing in between you. So very valuable time in my life. It's kind of what basically sculpted a lot of my character. I remember towards the end of my stint at Wolf Haven, which was all of my 20s. I worked there for all of my 20s. And I remember towards the end of it, it just became apparent that I needed to do something else. There was a huge issue starting to kind of brew up, and that was made evident by the first pack that was recorded back in Washington State since the 1930s. That pack was called the Lookout Pack. And that pack was actually poached. They found that they were being poached by some local citizens. And that was really depressing to me, so I kind of just kept hitting my head against the wall, realizing that there's a huge issue that's brewing, and I'd like to be a part of that. I'd like to help bring solutions to the table and kind of help facilitate that coexistence. I've always felt since I was little that I was a bridge between animals and humans, and felt that this was a time to kind of expand and move towards doing something in that capacity. I was 30, so I've worked all my 20s at this wolf sanctuary and learned just a tremendous amount, and was gifted a tremendous amount of opportunities and experiences that I'll never forget and I'll never take for granted. And I cherish them inside a lot. I'll just go back to those moments where I was in that sanctuary that wasn't just a sanctuary for wolves, but a sanctuary for the people that worked there as well. Anyways, so I kind of took a pack map of Washington State, which contained all the packs of wolves in Washington State, and found out where they're congregated, kind of put my finger in the middle of that. It happened to be the very corner of Northeast Washington. I said, you know, I'm gonna move up there, and I'm gonna do something to help this situation before it becomes a full-blown out problem. And I kind of just did that. What have you done? You've moved out to the middle of nowhere. You don't know anybody. You don't have any friends over here. There's no family over here. I'm gonna create a business, the first and currently only small business in Washington State that focuses on human-wildlife conflict mitigation, utilizing non-lethal techniques. So I spent 7 months homeless by definition, out in the mountains, just hitting it hard, working and trying to figure out how to range ride in Washington State.